The courtroom smelled like old wood and desperation the day my own mother stood up and said, "Your Honor, my daughter has never been stable. We only want what's best for her." I was still wearing the black dress from the funeral 3 weeks earlier, the one that still carried the faint scent of David's cologne, because I cried into his shoulder the night he died. $4 million. That was all it took for the two people who once sang me to sleep to decide I was too broken to keep what my husband left me. The air in that courtroom felt thick, like it was pressing against my chest, trying to squeeze out what little breath I had left. I sat there at the defendant's table, funny how they call it that when the real crime was happening in my own home, my fingers tracing the worn edge of the wooden railing. Every creak of the benches behind me sounded like whispers. Poor girl, lost her husband. Now this, but those whispers weren't pity. Not really. They were the same ones my parents have been feeding the world for weeks. She's fragile. She's spiraling. She needs us. David and I had been the kind of love people write songs about. The ones that make you believe in forever, even when the world keeps proving otherwise. We met when I was 24, drowning in student loans and a grief so heavy it felt like concrete in my lungs. My little brother Jake had died in a car accident 6 months earlier. Drunk driver. No survivors, the kind of senseless story that newspapers bury on page 6. I was working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, living on instant noodles and the kind of tears that come at 3 a.m. when no one's watching. David was the quiet hedge fund analyst who rented the apartment across the hall. He didn't try to fix me. He just showed up. One rainy Tuesday, he knocked with a container of chicken soup and an awkward smile. "Heard you coughing through the wall," he said. Figured soup couldn't hurt. That was it. No grand gestures at first. Just soup. Then late night talks on the fire escape. Then him holding my hand through the worst flashbacks of Jake's funeral. He proposed 2 years later with a simple silver band because he knew I hated anything. Flashy, anything that screamed money when we barely had any. We got married in a tiny park with 20 people and a borrowed guitar. Our first apartment was so small we had to climb over the bed to reach the kitchen. But it was ours. We built everything from scratch. The Sunday pancakes, the inside jokes, the way he traced circles on my back when I couldn't sleep. When his investments finally took off and the money started pouring in, first thousands, then millions, he never changed. He still brought me soup when I was sad. He still called me his forever girl like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then the tumor came. It started with headaches he blamed on stress. By the time the MRI lit up like a Christmas tree of bad news, it was already stage 4. Glioblastoma. 18 months. That's all the doctors gave us. David fought like a man who had everything to lose, because he did. Chemo that left him bald and vomiting. Radiation that burned his skin raw. Experimental trials we flew across the country for. Through it all, he held my hand and whispered the same promise. "We're going to beat this, love. And if we don't, you keep living loud for both of us." The last night was the worst kind of beautiful. He was so thin by then, skin stretched tight over bones that used to carry me when I was too tired to walk. The hospice nurse had stepped out for a moment. Rain tapped against the window like it was trying to get in. David squeezed my fingers weak, but deliberate, and looked at me with those clear blue eyes that still saw straight into my soul. "They're going to come for you, love. Your parents. Don't let them." I thought he meant the grief. The emptiness that would swallow me whole. I kissed his forehead and told him he was being paranoid. He smiled that crooked smile I'd fallen in love with. I installed something in the safe behind our wedding photo. "Promise me you'll look if anything feels wrong." I promised. I thought it was the morphine talking. He died at 2:17. Aim with my hands still in his. The funeral was a blur of black suits and casseroles and people telling me he's in a better place, like that was supposed to fix the hole in my chest. I stood by the casket in that same black dress, clutching The silver band he'd given me, now on a chain around my neck because my fingers were too swollen from crying to wear it. My parents were there, of course. Mom in her perfect pearls, dabbing her eyes like she'd lost a son. Dad gripping my shoulder a little too hard, murmuring about strength and family. I was too numb to notice the calculation in their eyes. Too numb to see the way they exchanged glances when the lawyer read the will in our living room the next week. Everything to me. The house, the investments, the $4 million in liquid assets David had quietly grown for us. In case something ever happened to me, he'd always said. They moved in to help the very next day. Mom with her Tupperware of lasagna and endless supply of, "I know exactly how you feel, sweetheart. I lost my mother too." Dad with his laptop and talk of protecting the family legacy. I was a ghost in my own home. I wandered the halls. In David's old sweatshirts, swallowing the sleeping pills the doctor had prescribed just to make the nights stop screaming. I'd sit on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m. staring at the empty side of the bed, whispering his name like maybe he'd answer. Grief like that doesn't break you in one clean snap. It chips away piece by piece until you don't recognize the person staring back in the mirror. My parents saw it all. And they documented it. At first, I thought their hovering was love. Mom would sit beside me on the couch, stroking my hair while I stared at nothing. "You're so fragile right now, Emily. We're here so you don't have to carry this alone." Dad would casually mention old therapy notes from college, the anxiety after Jake died, and how we should probably talk to someone about your history. I let them. I was too exhausted to fight. Too grateful for the casseroles and the company. That kept the house from feeling like a tomb. Until the day everything shattered. I'd come downstairs for water at midnight, moving like a shadow because the pills made everything slow and heavy. I heard Mom's voice from the kitchen, sharp, not the soft coo she used with me. She was on the phone, pacing in front of the fridge. "The psychiatrist says if we push the mental incompetency angle, the court will appoint us as guardians. $4 million, Richard. We could finally retire. Pay off the Florida house. Take that cruise we've been talking about for years." Dad's voice answered from the speaker. "She's already popping those pills like candy." The old therapy records, the public breakdown at the funeral hall. She hasn't left the house in days. "It's perfect. She'll thank us later when she's stable and we've managed the estate for her." The coffee mug slipped from my hands and cracked in the sink like my heart. I stood there frozen in the dark hallway, the water running, my parents' laughter drifting out like poison. Greed. Pure, ugly greed dressed up as concern. These were the same people who taught me to ride a bike, who cheered at my graduation, who once told me family was everything. Now they were carving up my future like it was a Thanksgiving turkey. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. Something in me, maybe the part David had strengthened all those years, went very, very quiet. I cleaned up the broken mug, slipped back upstairs, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling until dawn. The next 2 weeks became a masterclass in pretending. I smiled when Mom brought breakfast. I let Dad pat my shoulder and talk about moving forward together. I even let them drive me to the pharmacy for more pills, watching in the rearview mirror as they exchanged satisfied glances. All the while, my mind raced. David's words echoed. Behind our wedding photo, I waited until they were out grocery shopping. Heart hammering, I opened the bedroom safe we'd installed after the money came in. There it was, the USB drive, exactly where he'd said. I plugged it in with shaking hands. Video files. Dozens of them. Hidden cameras in the living room, the kitchen, even the hallway. Installed the day my parents moved in. David had known. Even while dying, he'd protected me. I didn't watch them all right away. I couldn't, but I copied everything to my own drive, tucked the original back, and closed the safe. The proof was there, cold, clear, undeniable. The morning of the hearing, Mom hugged me outside the courthouse like We were still the family in those old photo albums. Her perfume was too sweet, cloying. We're doing this because we love you. Sweetheart, she whispered, smoothing my hair the way she did when I was 7 and scared of thunderstorms. Once the court appoints us guardians, you can rest. We'll handle everything. I looked her dead in the eye, the black dress still holding David's scent like armor. The words came out steady, even though my insides were a storm. No. Mom, you're doing this because you're greedy. Her smile faltered for half a second. That was all the warning she got. The judge called my name. My legs felt like water as I walked to the stand, each step echoing in the sudden hush of the courtroom. The black dress clung to me like a second skin, still carrying the ghost of David's cologne, and I could feel every eye on me pitying, curious, judgmental. But I wasn't shaking from fear anymore. I was shaking from a rage so pure and bright it felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds after months of darkness. This was the moment David had prepared me for, even as cancer ate him from the inside. This was the moment I stopped being the grieving widow they could pity and control, and started being the woman who would not let them rewrite our story. My parents' lawyer rose first, smooth as oil on water. He spoke in the calm, practiced tones of someone who had rehearsed this performance 100 times. Your Honor, the petitioner, Mrs. Emily Harper's own mother and father, seek only to protect their daughter during what is undeniably the most vulnerable period of her life. Widowed at 32 after a prolonged and traumatic illness that claimed her husband, Mrs. Harper has exhibited clear signs of emotional instability, reliance on prescription sleep aids, documented history of anxiety and depression dating back to the tragic loss of her younger brother, public breakdowns at the funeral, weeks of near total isolation. These are not the actions of a woman capable of managing a $4 million estate responsibly. We ask the court to appoint our parents as temporary guardians of both person and property until she can demonstrate stability. He paused for effect, letting the words settle like dust. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a folded tissue she pulled from her purse. Perfect timing. Perfect tears. Dad sat beside her, shoulders squared in that way he used to do when he was about to lecture me about responsibility, his face arranged into an expression of solemn concern. The courtroom murmured in soft sympathy. A few heads nodded. I could almost hear the collective thought, poor thing. She really does look broken. Then my lawyer stood. Your Honor, she said, voice steady and clear. We have new evidence submitted this morning under emergency filing that fundamentally alters the picture the petitioners have painted. With the court's permission, we would like to present it now. The judge nodded once. I reached into the leather folder on the table in front of me. My fingers no longer trembled. Inside was the letter David had written 6 weeks before he died. He'd insisted his best friend, Marcus, the one who'd stood beside him at our wedding, witness it and have it notarized. The paper was slightly creased from being folded and unfolded so many times in the safe, but his handwriting was still strong, still unmistakably his. I didn't read it aloud. I didn't have to. My lawyer projected it onto the large screen for everyone to see. Emily, my forever girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm so damn sorry I left you to face this alone. But I know your parents. I've watched them for years. The minute the money became real, their eyes changed. If anything happens to me, they will try to claim you weren't in your right mind. They'll use your grief against you. They'll call it love. Tell the court to check the safe in our bedroom closet. There's a USB drive behind our wedding photo, the one where you're laughing so hard you're blurry. I installed cameras the day they moved in. Not because I didn't trust you, because I didn't trust them. Play the footage. Show them who they really are. And tell my wife I love her more than $4 million. More than anything. Live loud, love. For both of us. The courtroom went pin drop silent. You could hear someone's watch ticking 3 rows back. The bailiff took the USB, From my shaking hand, only then did the tremor return, just for a second, and plugged it into the courtroom's media system. The screen flickered to life, grainy, but unmistakable, time-stamped, audio crisp. The first clip, 3 nights after the funeral. I was supposed to be upstairs, drugged into sleep by the pills they'd encouraged me to take. Instead, the camera in the living room captured my parents sitting on our couch, David's couch wine glasses in hand, the bottle of expensive Cabernet we'd saved for anniversaries already half empty. Mom's voice, sharp and unrecognizable. She's a complete mess. The judge will eat it up. We just need to make sure she doesn't find the original will or start asking questions about the accounts. Dad chuckled, low and comfortable. 4 million split 3 ways once we're appointed guardians. We pay off the Florida house. Finally take that Mediterranean cruise we've been talking about since the kids were small. She'd thank us later when she's stable and we've managed everything properly. She's never been good with money anyway. Another clip. Mom in the kitchen the next morning, on speakerphone with someone who sounded like a lawyer. Yes, we have her old therapy records from after Jake died. And the sleeping pills, she's taking them every night. We can get a doctor to sign off on temporary incompetence. It's for her own good. Clip after clip. Smirking, planning, laughing. Never once mentioning me with anything resembling love. Just dollar signs and retirement dreams, and how easy it would be to help their unstable daughter. When the last file ended, the screen went black. Mom, single quotes, S face had drained of color so completely she looked like paper. Dad's mouth opened and closed, soundless, like a fish pulled gasping onto dry land. The theatrical tears had dried up. The folded tissue lay forgotten in her lap. I stood up slowly from the witness stand. My voice came out quiet at first, then stronger, carrying to every corner of the room. You called me mentally unfit, I said, looking straight at them. You stood in my home, our home, and planned to steal the life David fought to give me while I was upstairs crying myself to sleep on the pills you handed me. You turned my grief into your opportunity. You turned love into a transaction. I turned to the judge. My husband knew. Even while he was dying, he protected me because he loved me. Not my money, me. Tears spilled down my cheeks, but they weren't the broken, helpless kind anymore. They were hot and cleansing, the kind that come when justice finally arrives wearing the armor of someone else's courage. The judge didn't need long to deliberate. Less than 10 minutes, the petition was dismissed. The request for guardianship denied. My parents were ordered to vacate the property within 48 hours. As security escorted them out, Mom sobbing theatrically now, clutching at Dad's arm, Dad muttering threats about appeals and family disgrace. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. That night, I sat on the bedroom floor in the dark, the USB drive still warm in my palm. The house was finally quiet, no casseroles cooling on the counter, no fake concern drifting up the stairs. Just me and the memory of David's voice. I talked to him like he could still hear. I kept the promise, baby. They didn't get a single cent. They didn't get me. I traced the edge of our wedding photo on the nightstand, the one where I was laughing so hard I was blurry. Behind it, in the safe, the drive had waited like a time capsule of truth. The money never mattered. Not really. What mattered was the proof I'd found exactly where he said it would be. What mattered was that, even from the other side, my husband had wrapped me in one last layer of protection. What mattered most was the quiet vow I made to myself as I finally let sleep come without pills. I would live the life he fought so hard for me to have. Loudly. Fully unapologetic ally. Without ever letting anyone call me unfit again, because the strongest proof of all wasn't on any USB drive. It was the fire in my chest. The one David had helped light years ago that refused, now and forever, to let them win.